Start the video, Ruger. Hey, look, let's just be honest. Harley Riders are a lot of things, but they will never admit it.
Yeah, they think we're pretty cool.
And that's what we're going to talk about today as I give you the 7 things that Harley Riders just hate to admit, but they're absolutely true. Now, some of these things will be viewed in a negative way, some in a positive way. I'm willing to take the brunt as somebody that's a part of the Harley Davidson community, but I'm just keeping it real with you. And one thing I want to say, kind of a caveat to everything I'm about to say, even though there's some negative stereotypes that I believe are true when it comes to Harley Davidson and their riders, this is still the best community when it comes to motorcyclists. And I don't say that from an elitist standpoint. I say that as somebody that knows people that ride Harley Davidsons. I've gotten to meet a lot of people that ride Harleys, some of y'all even. And when it comes to people that will have your back, people that want to ride, have a good time, love motorcycles, there's just no better community. I'm sorry, there's just not. So yeah, we have some flaws, and yes, I'm willing to point them out, but we're still the best community out there on 2 wheels. Sorry. There's some great people in every community, and I've even got to meet some of you guys, but Harley is kind of where it's at. Now, you may totally disagree or agree. Make sure you leave your opinion after the video. Let's go ahead and jump right in. First thing we need to talk about is gear, right? Harley Riders hate to admit that wearing gear is necessary. It just is, right? Typically, the more gear you have, the better well suited you will be in case you go down, right? And that is just a fact. But you will hear Harley Davidson riders argue this point. They'll die on that hill. They will argue this point to the bone. They will tell you that that helmet is not going to save your life. And I don't know if it's a majority of Harley riders anymore, but it's definitely been kind of a staple in the community. Not that they're not on other motorcycles, but it's kind of one of those Harley things. You will see a lot of them not wearing helmets, right? They say, hey, if I go down on this thing, a helmet isn't going to save me. I've met people that have ridden Harleys for 30, 40 years, been in accidents, hit their head on the concrete even, sliding down the road, and still they say a helmet will not help them. And maybe it's the fact they did hit their head on the concrete going however fast that makes them unable to see that helmets and gear are so beneficial. Now, there's a level to this, right? Talked about this before, and I will continue because I think when you decide to ride a motorcycle, you take on a certain amount of risk, right? It's risky. The less gear you have, the more risky it becomes. The worse you are on your motorcycle as far as skill, the more risky it becomes. The more gear, the better skill, less risky. That's always key, right? I hate it when I hear people say, oh, he died doing what he loved. Most people don't want to be dying doing what they love. I don't want to be dying on a motorcycle. Now, if that's what happens when God chooses to call me, that's what happens. But at the end of the day, it's not how I want it to happen, right? I want to enjoy that ride, right? And I want to enjoy future rides too. I understand it's a comforting thing for family and friends, but still, most people don't want to die doing what they love. They want to continue to do that thing that they love. But gear can be very beneficial. It's not going to save you 100%. As a matter of fact, there's a piece of gear I have coming that I think some of you guys are going to scoff at. Turn your notifications on because that's going to be a good one too. But still, there's an amount of gear that I think you need to wear. And Harley riders, some of them are very stubborn. They won't wear gear. And I don't think we should make them wear gear. But I'll still continue to say that wearing gear, helmet, gloves, pants, boots, those kinds of things can be very beneficial to save you a lot of heartache or worse down the road. Let's talk about the other part of this, which is skill. I just mentioned it. And there are Harley Davidson riders that refuse to get better when it comes to like low speed training. I have a buddy of mine that went down with me when I trained with Robert at Be the Boss to Your Motorcycle. He was actually hesitant on paying that much money to learn from somebody on how to operate your motorcycle at slow speeds. Now, we worked out kind of a deal, and I ended up paying it for him. But I was glad to do that because after that class, he saw the benefits of it, and he said he would absolutely go back. Now, it's been almost a year, and several things have happened in between that time, back surgery and whatever. But the plan is to go back to Robert, right? And to really start to, get good on the motorcycle, because I believe that always will translate to not only skill the faster you go, right? But also building more confidence, right? That's something that I absolutely want, just total confidence that no matter what I run into out on the road, no matter if it's a mandatory U-turn because of an accident, where normally you'd be like, oh, this sucks, to being able to, okay, whip the thing around and keep it moving, right? Some of those tight U-turns on some of these roads in Tennessee or even in the Black Hills or wherever you ride. Not being nervous about those things, but knowing that, hey, I've built up the skills and I got a lot of tools in my kit now to use in order to tackle these things. And I'm totally confident in my abilities to do that. And a lot of that, most of that comes from slow speed riding. Now, between him and Ride Like a Pro, those guys have a lot of Harley riders that go through there, and there's other courses throughout the United States where a lot of Harley riders will do it. But there are a good amount of them that say, nah, don't really need to do that. That's not for me. I know how to ride my bike. I've been riding for 40, 50 years, never had any trouble whatsoever, as you see them kind of duck walking at bike weeks and other places like that. The other thing that Harley riders will not admit is that Harleys are expensive and slow. One thing you'll commonly hear from non-Harley owners is, why would you pay that much money for a bike that doesn't even have 100 horsepower? Now, fortunately, we're getting past those days, but we still look at each other and we're like, dude, yeah, I got 114 horsepower and 128 foot-pounds of torque. We look at that like it's, just incredible. Like, oh my gosh, dude, that thing is built up.
Do you ride a big, loud Harley and go up and down the streets ruining everyone's nice time?
No.
Well, that's what's coming stock in the 117 high output motor in the Lowrider S now. 105 horsepower is a pretty big deal for the new Road and Street Glide. Those things almost have, well, they do have 130 foot-pounds of torque. That's a $30,000 machine for $10,000 or whatever. But here's the thing that you don't quite understand, and you won't really hear maybe a whole lot of riders admit it. Well, maybe you will. They'll say, hey, yeah, it's expensive, but this thing runs like a damn racehorse. And you're scoffing at them, laughing at them, or whatever, because you think, oh, I have 175 horsepower in my CBR 600RR. Well, guess what? Your 600 CBR RR is obviously faster in a straight line, and you're going to be able to go through the twisties a little bit quicker. But one thing you're not going to be able to do is listen to your favorite music coming through the speakers in your fairing, riding comfortably with your feet out in front of you. And another thing you damn sure do not have, there's no sound like a Harley Davidson. There's no look like a Harley Davidson. And there's really no comfort like a Harley Davidson. Sorry. Yeah, it looks really cool, but it makes my back hurt just looking at some of you guys riding down the road. And yeah, Harley riders, a lot of them won't admit that, hey, you pay a lot of money for something that is kind of slow, but we get there a hell of a lot more comfortably. And I must say, the torque coupled with the horsepower on a Harley, and some of these guys that build these engines out, holy crap, they will definitely surprise you how quickly an 800-900 pound motorcycle can actually move. Just be careful, you might feel a little heat coming from the grip. That's, of course, one of the several amenities that we get as Harley Davidson riders. The other thing Harley riders will rarely admit is the fact that we pay a lot of money for these motorcycles, and for a good amount of time, they actually sit in the garage. It's something that we're all guilty of, right? You'll make payment after payment after payment, and some of you that live up north, you guys are just like frozen in for the entire winter, right? We had a snowstorm down here in the south recently, and it shut everything down for like 2 or 3 days. And I was just thinking to myself, like, how horrible this would be to have to deal with this all the time. But then I remembered that up north you guys have these things called like snow plows and salt trucks, and I'm like, oh man, that sounds amazing. Yeah, very little of that stuff was actually called in, but regardless, it is what it is. Still, no matter the reason, there's a lot of people that just ride their Harleys on the weekend. Weekend warriors, there's actually a whole nickname for these guys. And when I was doing a lot of commuting back and forth to work, I loved riding my Harley into work, even though sometimes I had to sit in traffic and there were some really hot days out there coming home, and whatever the case was, again, motorcycles are kind of a sense of accomplishment when you do a really tough road, but they're also kind of a mental health thing for me as well. I know it is for a lot of riders, where it just kind of helps clear your mind. You're riding with friends, and something about it just makes you feel good, right? And so there's been times where my motorcycle is just sat. I made payments, right? And so there's a lot of Harley riders like that. There's some that are hardcore riding all the time. Rain, sleet, snow, doesn't matter. But there's a lot more where they ride very selectively. Now, there will be plenty of people in the comments of this video that say, I have a Harley and I ride that thing every single day. And that's freaking awesome. Like I've said several times on this channel, I do more talking about motorcycles now than I do actually riding them. So when I'm able to get out and ride with a friend or two or whatever and actually get out there and enjoy it, or go up to American Biker every once in a while, I freaking love that. But for the most part, I'm coming up with ideas for videos just like what you see. So those opportunities where I go to Tennessee, or when I went to Sturgis last year, Daytona, whatever, I really try to enjoy those and get a lot of great footage, because there's times where I go weeks or even a month or more where I'm not on the bike. I had guys I used to work with that would be like, man, why do you like riding into work? Be like, well, this is where I come most of the time, so I'm not going to leave my bike at home when I have a chance pretty much every day to bring it out and about. I would much rather do that than be sitting in a freaking truck in traffic. Kind of sucks. I'd rather be on my bike. Yeah, it sucked at times, but still, there was people that didn't understand why I would ever ride a bike to work. The only time they wanted to ride a bike is when the roads were free and clear on the weekend or whatever, and I get that too. The other thing a lot of Harley riders don't like to admit is that we are a walking billboard for our favorite brand. I mean, Harley could pretty much cut out all of their social media, all marketing whatsoever. And we're going to carry the torch for them, because from head to toe, some of us have Harley Davidson gear on. I mean, all the time. I at least have one piece of gear on from Harley Davidson almost every single freaking day. Most of my jackets that I wear are Harley Davidson, Willie G specifically. Hats, t-shirts, checkerboards, kids' toys, dog collars, dog water bowls, clocks, neon signs, long sleeve, short sleeve, and no sleeve. We wear Harley Davidson. We are generating billions of dollars for the motor company and giving them free advertisement at the same time. Anytime you go somewhere new, it has a new state on it, new city, whatever. It's Harley Davidson, you got to buy it. Now, one thing I will say, there's like the standard Harley stuff, but you will find different designs from different Harley dealers, and a lot of them are just totally different. I actually like that part of it. So it's not like you're coming across the same design every single time when you go into a Harley shop. They're always a little bit different in the type of stuff they like, whether it's skulls or girls or whatever it is. I really kind of like their stuff, and their stuff tends to last actually a really long time. Their jackets are well made, hats are well made, t-shirts are pretty awesome. I don't know what yeah, okay, I got a Deals Gab shirt on, but regardless, I mean, there's just a lot of Harley Davidson shops that just sell clothes because they know we're going to freaking buy them. The only reason I'm wearing a Deals Gab shirt right now and not a Harley Davidson Tail of the Dragon shirt is because that Harley Davidson that we stopped at the Tail of the Dragon, was closed the day we came by. Otherwise, yeah, I'd be wearing a Harley version of that. Yeah, we're walking billboards for them, and we embrace it openly. I mean, we just like wearing this stuff. I know I personally like wearing their stuff. It looks good, it feels good, and it's made fairly well too. So yeah, there's that. We're all walking billboards for the motor company. Another thing you might not hear Harley riders admit too much is one of our biggest fears, and I think this universally goes for pretty much all of us, is that we are terrified of dropping our motorcycles, especially at some kind of a rally. When there's a lot of bikers around, that's when it becomes like super embarrassing. And it's not just the embarrassment factor of it, it's the fact that they are heavy as hell. And if you don't know how to properly pick up a Harley, you're gonna struggle by yourself. Maybe you never get it up unless you have somebody else to help you. Now that's one great thing. If you drop your bike at a bike night or a rally or whatever, you're gonna have plenty of people coming over and helping you out. Very rarely are you gonna get ridiculed for doing this. We've kind of all been in that situation, I guess, but still, you're not going to get ridiculed, but it is so freaking embarrassing. And then you got to pick this heavy freaking thing up. That's where a lot of training comes in handy. That's why I just, like I've always said, getting better on the motorcycle at slow speeds is like the ultimate goal, because it gives you options. And if you understand how power to the rear wheel works, right, and constant power, even turning the handlebars at slow speeds, which is one of my biggest issues, as long as you given that bike power, right, it's not going to fall on you. But understanding that and practicing that, using that in real world scenarios might be a little bit different if you're not as confident in those skills. So when you're around a lot of bikes and you got to do a sharp right hand turn, you're trying to keep your feet off the ground, but then you're like, oh, this feels a little bit better right now, and I don't want to take a chance with it. There's an embarrassment factor to it for sure, but again, you don't want to have to pick the dang thing up because it just kind of sucks. You know, another thing about Harley riders that a lot of us don't want to admit, but it's absolutely true as well, is that, you know, we kind of have this rough and tough image, you know, all tatted up and, you know, whatever, you know the stereotypes. But once you get inside the community, you realize, man, these guys are very similar to me. You meet a couple of people and you guys start talking, you're like, oh man, this is awesome. The only difference is, you know, we're all tatted up in leathers and Harley gear and we like motorcycles, right? But there's a certain image that comes along with the biker community, but especially with Harley Davidson riders, because of the way some of us look and the way some of us dress and the fact we're taking on so much risk riding a motorcycle. You don't realize that there's a friend that you want, right? Like a friend you can depend on. A lot of them ride Harley Davidsons. And I'm not saying that everybody in the community is perfect by any means, but some of the best people I've ever met, I'll say it, I've said it before, I'll say it again, are inside of this community. There's just a certain bond there that you get with people because of your love of motorcycles. I have an older friend, right, that I like to ride with, right? He's a really good friend of mine. And he's always been like super concerned about my comfort level because he knows, I mean, especially before I got the Saddleman seat, which again, I will swear by those things until the end of time now, especially. But that Saddleman seat coupled with their backrests has made such a huge difference. And then after my back surgery, even though my back is worse now doing things, right, physical things, it's actually better sitting on the motorcycle, probably in big part because of the seat and the backrest, to be totally honest with you. But before I got that, you know, he'd make sure he stopped like every 50, 60 miles because that's kind of what I needed, right? And that's just one example. But again, you'll find guys that you just bond with and, you know, they take care of you, they look out for you, and vice versa. Same one I went out to Sturgis with, he's the one that towed my truck 6 hours away and drove 2.5 hours the opposite way to get a trailer. So total probably, I don't know, 10, 11, 12 hours, whatever it was, when I was wrecked up in Tennessee and I had to get it back to South Carolina for repairs because the shop up there absolutely sucked. I won't name them. But have a good friend that I met because of Harley Davidson, because of riding in the community, that was willing to do that. And the last thing that you will never hear a Harley Davidson rider admit is that we kind of do like other bikes. I ask one of my friends this all the time. Like, hey man, what do you think about this Indian? I don't like the heads, I don't like the fender, and I don't like this. Well, I guess it's all right. So really kind of hard to get him to say he likes Indian, right? And there is an aesthetic thing there. But, and I've even said it before, but I like Indians, right? One motorcycle I really like is BMW. That GS, I think it's the GS 1250 or the R 1250, whichever one it was. I did a review on like over a year ago. I thought that thing was freaking awesome. That was way too tall for me personally, but I thought the bike was freaking cool. Honda makes a lot of great motorcycles. I'm not a huge fan of the Goldwing. I just don't like the way it looks necessarily, but a lot of their cruisers are freaking awesome. Kawasaki. I'm not a sport bike guy, but like your ZX-10s and the ZX-12 or ZX-14, whatever the hell series they're on now, 200 horsepower, 220. It's insane. Not a big fan of their bagger, by the way. I think they could do a much better job as far as the aesthetics, but I've made my point pretty clear when it comes to that bike. Still, there's a lot of motorcycles that I really like. Even the CBR 1000 RR. I rode that thing. I actually did a review on it twice because the first time I was complaining so much that my back was hurting. I was like, man, people don't want to hear this crap. So I went back on a little bit better day that I was having and actually re-rode that motorcycle. And I thought it looked good. It sounded okay. Didn't sound like a Harley, but you know, there was a lot of great features on it, wheelie control and traction. I mean, there was just a lot to it. And they look absolutely fantastic. And another bike that I like in the Harley Davidson lineup that I would probably never own is the Breakout. That is such a sweet looking motorcycle. Went back to Harley there, got out of line with what the video was about, but we like a lot of different motorcycles. Motorcycles are just freaking awesome. They're cool to look at. They're even better to ride, and yeah, they bring a lot of joy to a lot of people. Even Harley riders like other motorcycles. Just don't try to get them to admit that because they probably won't. That's it, man. Those are 7 things that Harley riders hate to admit or will never admit, but these are truths inside of the community. I'd love to hear some things that you've experienced as a Harley rider that you kind of see people not really admitting, but you know are absolutely true. Maybe you disagree with some of the stuff I said here or some of the points I said. Make sure you leave that stuff down below. If you like what I do, consider subscribing. See you in the next one. And as always, holding down.